Welcome back to another episode of the Daily Turnip. It is so good to be back. I know it's been a while. I think it has been almost 2 months, but we are starting 2026 off the right way. And there are some of the biggest news stories, probably like the last year, probably as big as us bombing Iran. And it only took, 2 days to start the new year. We're already dealing with some shit. I got BJ back. I got CK. Guys, say hi before we kick this thing off.
Hello.
Hey, MR. Oh, BG, you take it.
Hey, Omar. Great to be back. 2026. Going to be a fun year. Didn't think there would be as many geopolitical things occurring as quickly as they are. But here we are.
Here we are. What do you got
CK,
for us,
send
CK?
it, baby.
Well, since it won't be in the news cycle, I will be obligated to mention 317 days since Pam Bondi said Epstein files are on her desk. 181 days since Kash Patel said there was no credible evidence to implicate uncharged third parties. Epstein died by suicide, and the case was closed. That didn't work out, did it?
No, it has made more progress than we thought we did. But today is not an Epstein episode. Maybe we can save that for next week or the week after. I think the biggest news story, the reason why people are going to listen to this podcast and try and consume any amount of information they can is because what is happening in Venezuela. So, as most of you know, if you give a shit about what's going on in the news, you probably know that the United States did an operation where they removed the president of Venezuela. Now, there's still a lot of information coming out, including the death tolls. I read reports where over 80 Venezuelans have died, whether it's military or civilian. It has not been made clear to this point. And from what I'm aware of, that no Americans died in this operation. And so we're going to get into, hey, how did the world react? Is this good? Is this bad? Was this a terrible move by Trump, or is this going to cement his legacy as a top-tier president? There is so much to dive in and analyze what actually is happening here, rather than just what your Twitter, X, TikTok feed is telling you. But first off, before I kick it over to CK to kind of talk about why this is good or bad, CK, I'll let you kind of pick the lane there first, is I can confidently say that this is one of the greatest military operations in the history of the world. Regardless if it was the United States, regardless of what country, regardless of what era, this single operation is absolutely insane. If you think about it, the fact that the United States went into a sovereign nation that thought or was preparing for an invasion by the United States and was able to go in and remove the president without killing him and successfully extracting him out without losing a single American life, like, makes the Bin Laden mission back in 2011 look like a joke. This is single-handedly the most insane thing that has ever happened in military operations, and I'm very excited as the information comes out, how it was executed, what it looked like, as the Pentagon starts slowly releasing that information for us to see how did this actually happen. But the way the information stands now, greatest operation ever. Given massive round of applause to the men and women that are involved in this operation, keeping everyone alive and executing flawlessly, like, just hands down amazing. So CK, I'll turn it over to you first. Tell me why this is good. Tell me why this is bad. Your first initial reactions to abducting the president of a sovereign nation.
I'll tell you why it's bad, because the last 25 years of foreign policy and nation building have said so. I will cede to start that tactically, from a military perspective, it was very impressive. Tactically, very well executed, pretty much flawless. Strategically, same end state as Libya, as Syria, as Iraq, as Afghanistan, as you name it. We removed some power. We created a power vacuum, and we'll be dealing with the ramifications 10 to 20 years from now.
So before we get into those big strategic things, from a tactical level, what does this send to our adversaries? How does Russia and China feel knowing that we went into this nation, took out all their air defense, was able to take out a president without killing him, removing him? What type of force presence does that show these other nations?
I don't think it shows much. We took out.
Really?
Did we take out air defense?
We must have, if we were going to bring in helicopters and all the aircraft that we did.
Yes, we absolutely did. We did massive seed and deed operations.
Okay, so
and for the audience, what is seed and deed, BG?
Suppression of enemy air defense and the destruction of enemy air defense.
Thank you.
Okay, so we went to a third world almost nation, and we dominated them militarily. You can say, okay, Russia could do that with Ukraine. Fair point.
That's a huge point.
Israel's done this. China's done this. I think North Korea did this.
No
Uh,
way, not to this level at all.
didn't they kill like Kim Jong Un's sister or something a couple years back, with like assassination by poison? So I
Yeah, it's
mean,
totally different.
maybe, but could we do this on China or Russia? No, I don't think we're sending a message that, oh, you better watch out, Xi Jinping. Like, yes, we exerted our influence and it went well. That was great. It went flawless. I mean, it could have gone. Not to say this is like a given. America should be able to do this every time. No, I'm not saying that, but I'm not saying that Xi Jinping or Putin are shaking in their boots because they're next. That's absolutely not the
Sure.
case.
Yeah, no, I was coming more from a perspective of, hey, this just shows how strong the United States military is and how well we can coordinate things to show, okay, our military is not a joke. Like us being in Afghanistan for 20 years, us being in Iraq for what, 15, 18 years, however long we were there for. No, no, this is what we're really capable of when we have the right leadership in place and a solid plan. There's really no
Uh,
limit to what is achievable.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was flawless from a military and from a tactical perspective. Tactically, it went off without a hitch.
All right. So tell me strategically why this could be bad, and then BG, I'll ask you why this could be good.
because we've because the end state is what Maduro's out of power, right?
Yep.
And what follows is who knows. That's the problem. We're good at getting rid of Osama. We're good at getting rid of Gaddafi. We're good at getting rid of Saddam. We have no idea what to do after that. Do we puppet government? Do we put in somebody? Do we just leave it blank? What do we do? Who knows? It's never a good answer. You know why it's not a good answer? Because there's a power vacuum, one, and two, we are going to do what's in the interest of America. And we're really going to do what's in the interest of America in the next 2 to 4 years, which
Yep.
is definitely not going to be in the interest of America in 10 years, right? So what we'll do is put in a puppet that says yes to the United States government. But by definition, if they're saying yes to the government of the United States, they are corruptible, right? By definition, they are not for their own people. They're for
Sure.
our politicians. And so by definition, uh, they're bad news for their own country, which means their country is not going to get any better in the long run.
Okay. Okay. All right, BG. Why is this, I guess, beneficial for America then?
Um, so first of all, I agree with CK on that. So militarily, let me touch militarily first. I think this was a really incredible operation to see from the U.S. perspective. We've already demonstrated in Iran that if we need to attack a specific target and have a significant impact, we can. Not as significant as we had initially thought, but still significant enough that Iran has not threatened Israel or any other country in the Middle East for a bit. I think what the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff articulated, specific to the point of having over 150 aircraft in the air simultaneously conducting operations, is pretty insane. I still do not think that Russia or China are actively capable of doing an operation to that scale and measure. So I think those are significant signaling things. Specific to the Chinese perspective, I think it's also very interesting when you look at the perspective of timing. So the Chinese diplomatic special representative for Latin American, what was it, Latin American and I think Caribbean affairs, was on the ground during this operation and attack. Why is that significant? So China was actively working on what their oil refinery long-term plan was going to look like because currently they refine 40% of Venezuela's oil, which is
Yep.
significant because when, I sent you the math yesterday, when you look at how much money we're talking in terms of just oil alone, not even including natural gas or any other minerals that we could potentially talk about, you're talking about $8 trillion in just oil. That's more than Saudi Arabia or any other country in the entire planet, right?
Yep.
So significant. And I think that could potentially be used as signaling. To date, we think that those representatives are still on ground in Venezuela. China has not said either direction whether or not they are or are not still there. We don't know if they had to seek safety during the attack. And obviously, Beijing came out, immediately and demanded the release of Maduro, and strongly condemned U.S. actions in Venezuela. But I think this sends a significant posturing perspective to China and Russia moving forward. So, what do I mean with respect to that? I kind of take the opposite stance of what CK was saying, specific to U.S. influence in the Western Hemisphere. I think this could signal to them that we would be willing to act decisively against any hostile regime trying to make anti-U.S. alliances. Um, Specific to Venezuela, I think it's significant because their neighbor Panama, just up the road, just
Yep.
yesterday, just destroyed their friendship monument with China in response to this. So you don't think
Yep.
that's significant? I think that's pretty significant. I think this could potentially show some sort of shift in regional geopolitics and weaken adversary footholds in this hemisphere. To CK's point, yes, I think stabilization of the government um, is going to be problematic. I think that there's a potential that we could get the right person in place for it, and that might help us continue to justify the fact that we conducted the raid. I think the leadership change could potentially create space for a democratic government again, more committed specifically to the rule of law and getting Venezuela back on an individual connected economic status. And I think that could help. In terms of energy itself and economic opportunity, we already talked oil, right? They have massive natural gas supplies as well. And then in addition to that, minerals. So the big pieces we've been looking at with respect to minerals now are lithium reserves, and that's going to touch on anything battery focused, and then gold, copper, and any other component that's currently used in chips. And so, guess what? Venezuela has the largest reserve of all of the above on the entire planet, even more so than anything we found in Africa thus far across the entire continent. So, I think there's a lot to be gained, not necessarily for us economically, but for Venezuela economically, if we can pour U.S. companies or more westernized companies into the capitalist base in Venezuela, assuming we can get that kickstarted. But that
Yeah.
takes, to CK's point, that takes a lot of, you know,
And,
ifs
and,
that have to be fulfilled that are positive towards our light, which
and
currently they're
I
not.
think that's the hardest part, right? I think there's
Yeah,
no just objectively looking, right, regardless of who your alliance is with, this is obviously a massive win for the United States for all the economic reasons that you announced. Whether it's a win for Venezuelan people outside of them all applauding the end of a dictatorship, is this going to turn into one of the African countries where they're minimal rich and they just become all slaves and they still make 5-10 cents a day and they're still living in horrific conditions and their country's not developing because the world is exploiting those resources? Or is the United States able to saying, hey, geographically, we're significantly closer than doing operations in Africa or the Middle East. We can be more involved, more hands on, and do this maybe, I don't know if the right way is the correct way of saying it, but do it more in a partnership where we can lift Venezuela. BG, you just said Venezuela is one of the richest resource countries in the world, and yet they're one of the poorest
absolutely.
in the world, right?
Yeah,
So
Yeah. So
obvious,
so
yeah, go for it.
yeah, you said it's obviously a massive economic win for the U.S. No, it's potentially,
No, with this
average.
administration, they'll take what they want. There's no doubt
But
about
but
that.
but but there's we're not looking at what there's other players, right? China is the biggest importer of Venezuelan oil, right? They're obviously going to have a say. Russia is the biggest holder of crude oil, heavy crude oil in the world. So this obviously affects them too. Everyone, the whole world is holding their breath to see how they react. And
Yeah,
and
exactly. So do you think the United States did something on the side with Russia, China before they did this move? Do you think they said, "Hey, we're going to do this. Let's make some
no,
concessions
no, I mean
beforehand"?
potentially, but what I think is going to happen is they're going to have uh they are going to react. It's going to be to the detriment of the U.S. And so we're going to have to be dealing with that. Uh, on top of that, Venezuela is not just going to give us 300 billion barrels of oil. They're not just going to give us their natural resources. Uh, like you said, maybe we install the right government, we nation build, we make Venezuela build a rich capitalist democratic country like South Korea or Germany. Maybe it's just like Iraq, or maybe it's just like Afghanistan, or maybe it's just like Libya or Syria or all these other countries. I would say it's probably closer to the latter than the former. On top of that, um, shit, I don't know what the other point was that you made, MR, but we'll stop there. I'll let you guys respond to that.
I So CK, normally I would agree. I think the only difference, or the most significant difference in Venezuela, especially when compared to Middle Eastern countries, is this country was capitalist pre 2013. So there is a recent enough generation of people on the ground in Venezuela, including in the most recent poll that Maduro, or election where Maduro won the election. There are a significant number of Venezuelan nationals who will definitely allow or
So, so
enable democracy to happen.
So if you look at the track record of the United States and nation building, it gets a bad rep. But if you look at it, very successful with Germany, very successful with Japan, very successful with South Korea, totally different countries than what we're trying to rebuild in the Middle East. How hindsight's 2020, but when you look in Afghanistan, they were just a bunch of tribes. Their borders weren't even real. It was just drawn on a map by some British people. They at no point did they think they were one nationalistic country. They were a bunch of tribes thrown together. So to build democracy into a nation or into a people that can barely comprehend what that is, I think it's very incredibly challenging, as we saw. But when you take a step back and you look at it from a geopolitical standpoint, there's only three players in this entire world: it's the United States, China, and Russia. Everyone else is aligned to one of the three. You can say that maybe Great Britain. I don't think that. I don't think anybody in Europe is a national geopolitical player anymore for numerous different reasons. So I think for the United States to do this, knowing how close Russia and China were to Venezuela, I felt like it was national security how to do it from that standpoint. I think this whole drug
Had to do it
narrative,
or did it?
um,
I
sure,
don't
did
think
it,
they
did it
had to
for
do it.
sure, yeah. There's no absolute, so I can buy that. But it made sense for the United States to do this, being saying, "Hey, I don't want my two adversaries to have all the resources and have that influence in my neck of the woods." And so, if you look at what Russia did, hey, the United States, Europe was in their neck of the woods with Ukraine potentially going NATO. Russia felt like they had to do something. And I think it is 100% totally on the board that China invades Taiwan in 2026. I definitely think by 2027, as they have the same mindset, and maybe Venezuela is kind of that green light. And I wouldn't be surprised if they all make a deal saying, hey, US, you can do whatever you want with Venezuela if we can do whatever we want with Taiwan. I
So
definitely
if
think those
China,
are some backdoor talks.
so if China takes Taiwan, do we call this a W for the U.S.?
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying I think those talks are on the table. Maybe it is. I don't know if you do the math one for one. I don't know. I want to say no because we're very close. We have a very strong relationship with Taiwan. Economically, they're very important, and it, kind of creates that perimeter around China, so they can't, project all their naval forces and air bases as they want. But I think those are conversations going on.
What do you think, BG? We trade Taiwan for whatever this regime change equals. Is that a W for the U.S.? Is that do
No,
we
point blank,
say?
no, it's not a W. However, there
I
is
think
something
so.
to be
That's
said.
true.
However, there is something to be said for the fact that probably by the end of 2026 or quarter one or quarter two 2027, the TSMC factories in the United States for semiconductor chips will be complete. I don't want to say Taiwan would be obsolete at that point to us, but in the context of what's most important in the terms of the AI race, they would definitely be obsolete.
But what signals that tell to every single country, to the Philippines, to all of these other countries, if you're saying, well, we traded Taiwan for Venezuela because they have oil, so you actually don't matter as long as we get a sweeter deal with more resources.
Yeah, no, I don't think it sends the right message. And again, I don't think there's a scenario in which we actually back off of helping the Taiwanese.
But how do we not after something like this?
That's
How
kind of the point
how
that I'm making.
how
How
is it
do they
not the
not want
exact
something in
same
return?
thing?
I think it's different in that we're still allowing China right now to build the island systems, as many island systems as they
Are
want in
we
the South
allowing
China
them
Sea.
to? Because what are we going to do to
Yes,
stop them if we tell
we
them
haven't
not
st-
to?
we haven't done anything to stop them.
That's
These
my
What
whole
could
point.
we
islands.
Like,
do?
because what
What
could
could
we?
we do? Okay, so
If we wanted to,
eh,
we could park destroyers and cruisers straight in the
But that's
China
not going
Sea
to
and
do
just make it so they
anything.
can't build.
and,
Yeah,
okay, and
you could
We're not
definitely
going
stop
to
them from
human
building.
missile blockade them.
No, but you could
BG
definitely stop them
BG.
from
Let's
building.
follow this thread. China takes Taiwan. What do we do?
Nothing more than sanction if we take Venezuela.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
And I don't even
exactly.
know how much sanctions you can really do. They'd
And
probably be
and
pretty
China
light
and
in the
Russia
grand
aren't
scheme
going to
of
do
things.
anything to the United States for taking Venezuela. So
yeah, yeah.
I mean, they can just be pissed off. What are they going to do? And I bet you're going to see something about Ukraine in the coming days or weeks saying that the United States is decreasing what it's doing, or Russia gets a sweeter end of the deal on the peace talks, meaning they get a larger consent, like land grab or whatever is more important to Putin. I guarantee, if I was the betting man, I would bet that Russia gets a sweeter end in the Ukraine deal, and then China gets more of a green light on Taiwan.
Here's another question
I'm not saying it's worth it. I'm just saying.
Another question I want to pose to you too. What was the primary objective of this mission? Why did we do this?
I think it's to limit Russia and Chinese influence in our backyard.
Okay.
And I think it's resource gain. I do not think it is the justification of drug trafficking. I think that is just a means in which they can hold them legally accountable. I
that's
guess.
propaganda too, right? That's a reason to justify to the American people.
But you get all these resources, and you keep your adversaries from having those resources and effing around in your backyard. And I've been saying this for years, if not a decade. The United States should be significantly more involved in South America and Central America than the Middle East.
Do the resources help? Do the resources help President Trump?
Anything Trump wants can help him.
Do you mean like personally, like family wise? What are we?
No. I mean the administration, his approval rating, all of these things. Republican Party, right?
Sure, I think it does.
I think we're all on the same page that like they're not going to do it unless it's good for the GOP to win, the midterms, right?
Maybe not. I think they're trying to play. I think they're trying to play a longer game with this.
Sure, but if the Venezuelan people are happy, right, and they're all cheering everywhere you see, there's no one. I'm sure he has some loyalists, but everyone is happy.
No, there's a good split. I think there's a good split.
No, it was when I looked at the election data, it was like 70-30.
Yeah, it was pretty significant.
70-30 during the election for Maduro.
But let's just stop. A 30% population is millions of people. So we can't say like all the Venezuelans are cheering in the streets. No, there's a significant amount of people that think this is atrocious, right?
I agree. But however, they also had almost 9 million people leave the country because Maduro was elected. And I'm saying that with air quotes. Elected.
Yeah, but either way, right? We're not doing this for them, right? Trump,
correct. It can benefit them.
No, I don't think
there are dozens of African countries. There's so many countries in the world, maybe 100 that we could do that for. We chose Venezuela because they are the biggest world supplier of crude oil.
Yeah, we did this for minerals and oil. We did this to kick out our adversaries. And on the political side of the public approval, you can make it look good for the Venezuelan people.
But what's the end state for crude oil?
Have more of it. Be less reliant on other countries.
Because Venezuela, like, it's heavy crude oil. It's very hard. Right now, they are having a hard time refining it, right, to make it usable.
Yeah, and where are all those refineries in Louisiana and Texas, right across the Gulf.
Yeah, that's a fair point, but it's still, I think, going to take years, if not a decade, to industrialize, to build more bases, to refine, to upscale, to refine Venezuelan crude oil. I don't think this brings down the price of oil in any short term for a Trump or Vance or anyone election, right?
Well, it would. It would. Not a mass scale like you're thinking.
The oil markets went out today. They didn't change.
Brent futures crude did drop. Not a lot. It was basically insignificant. It wasn't material.
It dropped by 42%. So I said it didn't change. Negligible.
Yeah.
Sure, but yeah, are we finally arguing that the United States actually did something strategic that's going to go on for decades instead of just what's going to be impactful next week? Is that actually a good strategic move?
I'm asking you if that's what you think happened or if there's another motive. After everything that's happened this year, do not subscribe to the fact that we did something that's strategically significant for us 10 years from now. I just have a hard time believing that because no one's saying that either.
Yeah, but this also just happened yesterday. Just let the conversations develop. The first thing is shock and awe. Are we illegally allowed to do this? So I kept hearing legally, all rules are kind of made up. At the end of the day, it's just who's willing to enforce them if it's legal or not. And no one's going to enforce whatever you want to call this. So that's whatever. Sure. Yeah. So my point is, I think as the conversations like us having this and people listening to us, in days and weeks from now, they're going to start having those conversations. Is yes, this is a long-term, phenomenal strategic play for the United States. It is just straight up. Now, how we handle it,
I don't agree with that. I don't subscribe that it's automatically straight up a slam dunk.
No,
No,
I'm not saying automatic.
he's saying overtime. Yeah, he's saying overtime, longer play.
And if we
I
do
don't
the
think
right
so.
things, I think if we do the right things, this is significantly good for the United States. The move that has been made so
What
far,
if nothing goes against us? It's going to be significantly good if everything goes our way. But nothing like there's other people with choices, right?
no, I know,
Right?
yeah, absolutely. That's why I'm saying it has to be played correctly, and it can be incredibly beneficial for the United States. I'm
Yeah,
not talking
but
from a
also
moral, ethical standpoint. I'm just talking
no,
about
I'm not talking
where.
about moral ethical. I'm saying, right? More likely than not, or at least in my opinion, more likely than not, it's a catastrophe like Iraq and Afghanistan were.
I don't think you're going to see the terrorist organizations like that come in at all. There's no Islamic extremists in that part of the world, so you're not going to have that building up.
Who,
The only
who,
thing you're going to have is narco terrorists, which are
oh,
already an
they're
issue in
not.
Mexico.
They are an extremist. They're
Not,
not
not
doing
in
the
that,
same shit.
very different philosophically how they operate and what they believe in. And the United
That's
States has
interesting.
shown that they have no qualms whatsoever. Also, it's significantly easier to do military operations in your backyard than halfway around the world. But but again, long term beneficial. You kick Russia and China out, win there. Now play the economic game correctly, and it can be very economically beneficial for the United States. And it can, I'm not saying it will, but it can be very beneficial for the Venezuelan people. And that is the biggest question mark overall. Hey, can you bring Venezuela into the mix? Like BG was saying, like 2013, they're a democratic nation. Get them bought in, help them rebuild their country, create a strong relationship. That is all on the table because of this. I'm not saying it's
It's
a slam dunk, it's going to happen, but it
it's
is on the table.
you said it was a slam dunk. I'm just I would I would subscribe that there is so many question marks. It
Sure.
has definitely the potential to be 20 years and trillions down the hole, and in 2 decades we're fighting a new terrorist organization that hasn't even been invented yet as a ramification, as a fallout. No, I mean that's exactly what we saw in the last 2 decades, right? You're laughing, but I think it's more likely than not because that's what's happened through U.S. interventionist and nation-building policy
But CK,
and
the flip
regime
side of the
change.
coin, flip side of the coin though is you just let China and Russia continue to operate in our backyard with the largest distributor of oil on the planet. That's not viable. You and I both know that's not viable. So what are the other
Why?
options then?
What were they getting? What was the benefit from Russia for Russia and China?
They're still getting a significant oil supply that they don't have
Well,
themselves.
Russia wasn't, right. They weren't getting a they have their
Well,
own.
they still do.
But yeah,
They
but
still get
they
oil because
they
they still refine it. They still have massive companies that refine it.
Russia has their own crude oil. So I don't think they are big buyers. They are a player because now we have a big supply. China, it was 5% of their crude oil from Venezuela. So, I mean, yeah, we cut off their supply. But what do they do? They're just going to roll over and say, "Okay, you win this round." There's no way that happens, right? So
No, I
there's
agree.
going to be
Yeah.
ramifications. But like to
Yeah,
say
but it's just bargaining.
We've kind of
we
already
shouldn't
talked
have
about
done
that,
anything.
though.
Yeah.
China getting importing oil from Venezuela isn't illegal. So yes, I would say we let China do something that's not illegal because they need energy. That's There's nothing illegal about China getting energy. There's
No,
nothing
no one's making
immoral.
that
There's nothing
argument.
unethical.
We're not making that argument, and I haven't seen anybody in the news or social media make that argument either.
Well, BG just made the argument. He said, "What we just let China import oil from Venezuela?"
Yeah, but
Yes.
I don't think you talked about it from a legal standpoint. We just talked about it from a
No,
geopolitical
I'm just
standpoint.
saying. Yes, we do. Right. It's not significantly impacting us that China is legally purchasing energy from another country. Every country purchases oil from other countries. That's just how the world works.
I know,
Yeah,
but
no, I totally agree.
my bigger point wasn't about the oil itself. It was about the fact that you can't just continue to let Russia and China operate basically to any end that they want in Venezuela, specifically because it's in our hemisphere and that they are a key resource contributor for the entire planet.
And
Because
there's
it's not
other
just oil.
responses than taking out the president, I think.
Sure, that could be. But we've been on this topic for almost 30 minutes now. So, CKBG, I'll each give you guys 30 seconds to give me your closing thoughts on this before we move on to what I think is the biggest domestic issue that has happened in the United States in at least a year, easily. CK, you can go first.
I'll go first. I always like a good callback. You think primary motive was for energy and all of these things. I think Trump won the narrative game. We were all talking about Epstein a week ago. We're not talking about Epstein anymore. That was the reason.
All right, PG, go for it.
To the narrative game point, the initial reason for this was because of drug trafficking. I'm using air quotes for those of you who can't see me. Drug trafficking, because we said that Tren de Agua, one of the largest cartels in Venezuela, is a terrorist organization, and that the state of Venezuela was actively providing drugs to the United States and killing American citizens. Well, I don't think that was a reason for the operation. You could argue that we are finally having an impact, and I'm not going to say whether or not hitting drug boats, potential fishing drug boats in the Caribbean Sea is legal or not. But I will say that the data from the most recent overdose deaths in the United States would articulate to the American public that there's been a 25% decrease in overdose deaths in the United States. So one might argue that it is actually having an impact. And I'm not saying that we're doing it the right way, but there could potentially be a supply problem occurring that we are not taking into consideration.
No,
Taking out the president yesterday had nothing to do with the decrease in
I didn't
that in
say
2025, which was 5 days ago.
didn't say it did. Didn't say it did. I'm just saying that there's something else that they're trying to use as a talking point, and here's a counter talking point that kind of aligns with it. So we'll see how
yeah,
they try to use it.
no, I appreciate that, CKBG. I'm along the lines of, hey, I think this is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, military operation in the history of humanity. And excited to see all of it come out, how it was executed, and everything in between. And I think this has the potential to be incredibly beneficial for the United States and the Venezuelan people, and very bad for Russia and China. I think there's a lot of things that have to go right, and I don't think it's going to be easy, but the potential is there, and only time will tell. Because it could be a huge win for Venezuela. But all right, let's pivot to the Minnesota fraud, maybe one of the biggest frauds to happen in the history of the United States by Somali immigrants. And I think this is just absolutely wild and insane. Most of you, especially if you listen to this podcast, you pretty much know a lot of the details about the Somali immigrants using daycares as a front to get billions of dollars from both the Minnesota government, state government, and the federal government, and just one of the largest fraud scales. So I just want to read a couple data points real quick before we kind of get into one. How bad is this? Is anyone going to be held accountable? If you're defending this, should you re-question yourself, because this is one thing that's pretty much very easy to see that this is terrible. And are the Democrats going to suffer because they have been leading this? And they may say you may be kind of very involved in this as well. So the Trump administration froze approximately $185 million in federal child care funding to Minnesota and has criticized the Minnesota government handling of the fraud allegations. There are talks about the federal level about reviewing the naturalizing of immigrants, those convicted of fraud, and overall just deporting anybody that was involved in this. I think there's a lot of Americans that initially feel that way. So, CK, I want to hear your thoughts first about how bad this fraud is and how we got to this point, because we're talking about billions of dollars. And I do want to add, before you share your thoughts, is I think we should really look into the fact that, okay, we have Somali immigrants who probably, obviously, their spelling is terrible, right? They probably don't have the highest education level. I mean, the reason I say their spelling is terrible is they're misspelled like daycare and quality learning, which is just effing wild that we got to that point. Like, what the is going on? And so it's like, maybe they're just the pawns, maybe they're the sheep, maybe there's the puppets for people using them to, cipher millions and billions of dollars to wherever it needs to go. And also, I don't see them all in these massive mansions and everything. Like, where did the $1 billion go? Some might say, hey, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but some might say it might have gotten funneled right back into the Democratic Party. I know it's a bit aggressive. I know that's not super unbiased, but I'm very curious to hear your thoughts on the matter.
In terms of, is this the most massive fraud in the history of the United States? The answer is absolutely not. In fact, this is going on in probably every major city in the United States.
Oh, that's
all
terrible.
the time, every day. Daycare centers, one. SNAP, food stamps, definitely fraud. Where grocery stores are, paying 10 cents or 50 cents on the dollar. Here, I'll give you the food stamp. I'll give you money for, half what's worth, whatnot. That's happening on at in a large scale. All of it's happening on a large scale. And it's not a conspiracy to say that it's getting funneled back to the Democratic Party. It is on record millions and millions and millions, tens of millions of dollars from daycares in Minneapolis are getting donated to Democratic parties and Democratic campaigns. That's just a fact. Will anything come from this? No. Trump, I think, notoriously by now, infamously by now, doesn't prosecute anyone. He loves a good headline. He loves the narrative. He doesn't prosecute anybody ever. They put him. They got him on 31 counts. They sued him for hundreds of millions. And his response when he has the DOJ and everyone, he tweets a lot. Pam Bondi tweets a lot. They all tweet a lot. JD Vance tweets a lot. None of them do anything. They sit on their ass and they type on Twitter. I think it's one of the reasons they're going to lose the midterms, because everyone wanted responses. Everyone wanted large-scale convictions, arrests for all of these things. Everyone knows it's not a secret that the Democratic Party is engaged in high-scale fraudulent fraudulent work across everywhere, and it's not just the Democrats, the Republicans. Some of the Republicans are too. I think it is definitely on a larger scale for the Democratic Party, but there's so much fraudulent work with NGOs and the Democrat Party and money laundering, and everyone was waiting for Trump to do something about it. He hasn't done anything, and he won't this time. He'll tweet, and hopefully it helps his midterms and the following election a little bit. And people will be mad. I think Elon's back in the game. He's been tweeting a lot for the Republican
Yeah, he's
Party.
been pretty involved.
Because he's like, this is fraud at a scale we've never seen. So that's good. But
so I want to ask you, why do you think Trump hasn't done anything? But I want to say that I want to make the statement first because I'm like really enraged by it. Like almost every single government program just sucks. It just sucks so much. Like the government should almost be involved in like no programs because everything is either fraud or abuse
or nation building. Sorry.
Yeah, maybe honestly. We used to be good at it, maybe because we had the right leaders in place that actually held to a certain standard. But I'm just actually infuriated, especially when people argue that government programs like SNAP are great. It's like, no, it's abysmal. It is horrifically run. It's only hurting the people. And I even think it's simple. I went to the post office this weekend, and I had the worst experience ever. Every single person there was just dumb. Like they had no idea what they were doing. And I'm like, you are in charge of the post office. I was literally Googling how to do something and showing them how to do their job via Google. Like that is insane. I'm like, oh, this is a federal government program. This is absolutely insane. And I'm using Google to teach them how to do their job. This is not okay. And then we see the fraud like this and just everything. It just makes you angry. Like our taxpayer dollars, they might as well be, from Batman 2, The Dark Knight Rises, when the Joker just lights all the money on fire. That's what this is. And as a taxpayer, as a person that positively contributes to society, dude, I'm so angry. Like I hate it so much.
This is why every big city in America has been Democrat for the last 100 years. Because of this exactly, right? You have all of this welfare programs that really actually don't help, but makes the people dependent on the Democratic government to keep the welfare programs in line. And then those people donate to the Democrats. So the Democrats get rich off the welfare programs. So their campaigns are well funded. And the people continue to get their paychecks. It is just a constant circle of we vote you, you give us handouts, and the working class gets screwed.
Dude, I hate it so much. Yeah. How beneficial, like I pay for childcare, right? It's very expensive. It'd be great if I got a subsidy for that, whether it's on my taxes or whatever it may be, and I'm not paying the stupid amount of money. But no, the people that actually contribute to this country, that actually pay taxes, are not getting the benefit. It's immigrants, and I'm not even saying they're illegal, because from everything I've said, they're not illegal. But immigrants who are not contributing to society are getting all these breaks and becoming millionaires off of it. And like, how can you not be enraged? And how can people take that? That's what I want to know. BG, answer this, or CK, answer this. How are people defending this? Because to me, that makes no sense.
MR, they are. They're defending
How?
it.
Like I saw CNN go out there and there's like, well, this is actually just stopped being a daycare a week ago. Or they start shipping kids in on a bus and just dropping them off in front of the child care. And like, oh, they're only operational for 2 hours. Like, what the? Guys, are
we,
we in the Matrix? How
we've
fucking
no,
dumb is everybody?
we've somehow gotten to a point as a country where we're either anti GOP or anti DNC, so much though that we just take the opposite perspective, regardless of if it's good for Americans writ large. And
Yeah, it's such a loaded question, right? It's so deep. There's layers. This is the tip of the iceberg of what the Democrats have owned college institutions and they've owned public school institutions for so long. Doesn't matter what party has been in charge. The liberal mindset has been within all of schooling, right, since the 50s at least, maybe longer. And so we've brainwashed everyone to say that this is the right thing to do. We've pushed the goalposts so far as to say if you even speak up against this, you're racist or you're thisist, and you should be fired from your job and canceled in every single way. So the people who see that this is absurd, they just close their eyes and close their ears, and they just don't say anything, and they whisper in their corner because they're afraid of the backlash to speak up.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth there. I don't know, guys. I'm just very, very upset by this entire thing. I don't know how we've gotten to this point. I don't know how people are still defending it. It kind of just blows my mind and kind of honestly makes me lose faith in like humanity and like people's ability to critically think. And BG, to your point, oh, if the Republicans are for it, I'm against it, or if the Democrats are for it, I'm against it. Like just that such black and white thinking, regardless of what the issue, you just do whatever your party aligns is just like embarrassing, like absolutely embarrassing.
yeah, it's really
Uh,
troubling for
you
sure.
guys got anything to add before we move on to our last topic?
I was just gonna say yes, it's definitely troubling, right? It's just like the Venezuela thing. Pro Maduro was pulled out of power potentially because then there's a power vacuum and you could possibly install the opposition leader and then there's a route to democracy, right? Con, now there's a power vacuum and now you could have Saddam Hussein taking power instead of Maduro, right? It's the same thing here. Why is this considered acceptable behavior from either side of the aisle? This is insanity. This is insanity. We're throwing, and at this point, we're not even done with the reporting into the fraud, but it's at least $9 billion. So it's the same revenue level that SpaceX had in like 2023. A crazy amount of money, just absolutely asinine amount of money. And last year, I think there was almost $15 billion of just Medicare fraud in the United States. So, with all this fraud occurring, how much do we as citizens actually need to pay in taxes to fund our government and not fund these welfare systems?
Every
Really?
single welfare program is fraudulent, and not only it's not just a little fraudulent. They're mostly fraudulent. They're purposefully fraudulent. The purpose of it is fraud.
So let me ask this question: Is there a should we just cut all these programs and just be like, hey, they are horrifically abused. They help very little people. Let's just cut it. Or do you actually think we can run programs the correct way, where they benefit people and they're not fraudulent?
Cutting it would be better than the alternative, in my opinion. However, there would be a giant vacuum where a ton of people would not know what to do because they live their life on a paycheck from the government for doing nothing. There would be so many people. Um, I think it would probably need to be replaced with some sort of army or military conscription or something like that.
I was about to say, do you think that the government can be like, oh, okay, we actually have to give these people life skills, and here's a program to then you enter this program to develop life skills to contribute to society, knowing that hey, your automatic free ride ends in 1 year. Like, hey, you get 1 year and you're back in the real world. Do with that what you will.
I don't know. I'm not ready to fix the problem today. All I
Fair
know
enough.
is the problem today is absolutely horrific, and cutting it, I think, is better than the alternative.
Yeah, I like that. All right, any more final thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I think I agree with CK on that. Unfortunately, you would have to cut it and then It's similar to the Affordable Care Act problem we have today. You'd have to try to continue individual insurance while cutting the rest of the program because the subsidy process doesn't work because now insurance companies are just going to continue to have rate problems through the roof. So, yeah, I agree with CK.
That's a fair point. All right, so I want to move on to our last topic of the day, and it has not gotten that much media attention, but I think it could hold really or it could be very impactful throughout the world and definitely the United States. And that is the protests going on in Iran right now. So there are massive protests, and BG, I hope you can educate me a little more on this, about just how expensive the country is getting, how everything's increasing, and how the economy is not doing so well. And this is obviously because of the massive sanctions put on Iran, led by the United States and Israel, for developing their nuclear weapon and overall being viewed as an enemy. And so the Ayatollah, if I pronounce that correctly, has basically come out and said, like, hey, we are not going to give in to these protests. We are going to fight. We are going to crush them, and we are going to remain in power. I believe over 15 people have died so far, and the protests have not stopped yet. And so, BG, I'll turn over to you to see if you have a little more data points for us so we can tie in to talk about, hey, is this something, or this is going to develop and grow into something that we saw in 2011 with the Arab Spring, or is this going to get crushed and it's just another one of those instances where people try and rise up against the dictator and the oppressive government and just end up failing?
I think, to your point, MR, yes, people are upset with prices, but more so they're upset with the fact that their government is starting to behead women for not wearing headgear, and just basic,
Yep.
really, really basic things that a lot of Iranians weren't wanting the Arab Spring to win because they didn't want Sharia law involved in their country whatsoever.
Sure.
Because
Yep.
original Iranians were Persian, right? They're not Arab by
Hmm.
by actual
Definition.
yes. And so I think you have a lot of people that are upset with how the country is currently running because their banking system is having significant sanction problems now. They can't even get specific funds into the EU, and they used to have very massive funds in the EU, specifically in Germany, because they were doing trade deals. Um, this was this was post the Patriot Act stuff before we had new laws, and I'd have to look up exactly the laws, but it was around the 2013, 2014 era. So it took about a decade, but a decade later, now they're having significant economic problems, and it's also leading to additional protests. I think specific to this protest, though, I don't see it. Um, I don't see it moving large scale. I think the Ayatollah and the rest of the IRGC will do whatever is necessary to squash this protest. But you have people all over the country that are livid, that people are having their hands cut off or beheading women in streets or stoning them to death because they're not wearing headgear. It's 2025. Like, get over it. It's insanity.
Yeah. No. No.
Total
Absolutely.
insanity.
CK, is this something or is this nothing?
We'll see. I don't know. It's hard to tell with Iran. I don't think the problems are going to fix if they throw if they overthrow Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. I just don't see this being a quick fix, and I do know that we are heavily influencing it, but I don't think that makes it better.
Sure. Now, was it in the 70s when the Green Revolution happened, where essentially this extreme religious law took over and they destroyed the democracy of a once thriving nation? So I think right now it's a nothing burger. I think they'll probably um, what's the right word, like quell the protests, like stop the protests, like they'll kill like maybe 10, 20, 100 more people, and the protests will die out because they have so much power and so much control. But I think the pain of the general citizen in Iran is only going to continue because, BG, to your point, hey, if you don't wear the headgear, you're going to die, and people aren't okay with that. And then, of course, the economic pressure as well, where people are having an incredibly hard time to afford the things just to survive when that never has to be an option. And so I do think that this will continue. And CK, to your point, yes, I think the West, led by America and Israel, are doing a lot of psyop operations over there, trying to undermine the government. And they're probably helping resistance groups out. Use your imagination from a Hollywood movie that is giving this a lot of life. So I think something can happen down the road. I think it'll be a while and it'll be some form of a revolution, but I do not think that's in the field for 2026. All right,
Yeah,
cool.
I agree with that.
All right, so let's wrap it up. We're at that 50-minute mark. Good for us. We're getting right back into the game. I hope you guys missed us. And hey, leave some comments. Tell us you missed us and you want us back. Before we round out this episode, BG, give me your closing thoughts. It can be whatever you want it to be.
Closing thoughts. We'll see what happens with the Federal Reserve because for whatever reason, the president still thinks he's going to replace the chairman before his term is up, even though he doesn't have legal power to do so.
CK, I'll turn it over to you.
MRBG, we talked about oil, we talked about natural resources, we talked about the ramifications of a pro-West Venezuela. What I'd pose is let's think about the pipeline of shortstops that we potentially could get if we open up talks with Venezuela. Now, you might say a rich Venezuela equals worse shortstops, and I think I'd agree. So we have to keep them a little bit. We can't let them grow too fast, because if things are too nice, no one has that hunger to bat 450 switch hitting, in Little League.
I think the opposite. I think it's only going to produce better baseball players.
I need a good Carlos Santana with that nasty changeup. You don't breed that, and that doesn't come from a mansion. That comes from hunger and and the need to get out of a country that and search for a better life.
In other sports news, the Chicago Bears suck, and I'm excited that the NFL playoffs start next week. Can we also get a shout out to the Indiana Hoosiers for shocking the entire college football world by beating Ohio State and then Alabama and going to the semifinals with an opportunity to beat Oregon, and what could be known as the greatest sports story in the history of all sports and the greatest turnaround of any program whatsoever. Everybody, thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Daily Turnup. We appreciate you so much. There's so many things going on in the world, and it's really hard to decipher what's real, what's not, what's propaganda, and who's pushing what narrative. We appreciate you listening to us. Of course, we have our own narrative. We try to remain unbiased and look from all ends. Some things are easy when we had a great discussion about Venezuela, and some with the Minnesota fraud is just so one-sided, it makes you angry to see people coming to the defense, understanding that propaganda and I would say the wrong side is so strong. But we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Please like, subscribe, share this episode. Hey, and if we get enough likes, shares, and comments, we might just be back next week. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.